my media desk was way too small. I couldn't edit on it, I couldn't put everything on it I needed to. Plus I had to put all this audio gear on it. And I had a lot of camera stuff that I had to put on there, plus I needed to charge batteries and stuff like that. So I decided to build a 6-foot desk. And so I got to break down this bed, clear this room out, and I'll be using most of this material in the build and for future builds. It's gonna be nice to have a clean slate to work with, and the room will be clean and clear. I'll be painting with a 50-50 gray, half white, half black. It's a matte color, that way it will help in reflections and keep everything kind of dulled down. It helps with eye fatigue. And it helps with color grading because it doesn't introduce any colors while you're doing any type of color correcting. These are Hexagon sound panels that I got off of Amazon. They don't really soundproof the room, but what they do is they will dampen any reflections. So sound likes to hit a flat surface, hit another surface, and then you get echoes and you get, reverb in the room. And I want to deaden all that down to where it just sounds flat. I used reclaimed lumber for my workstation. I was going to use live edge, but it was just too expensive. So I'm joining the edges here, that way they'll be flat and they'll meet together nicely. And using a biscuit joiner and putting in biscuits here, that helps it line up and gives it a lot of strength when you're gluing it up. Sorry, my battery died, so here's the clamp up. It's time to straighten the edges and make this thing square and start getting onto the finishing of it. I'm using a trim router to give the edge a nice profile. I'm planing the top down to a consistent level, get rid of some of the high spots. I'm also sanding off all that old, it looked really pretty, but I'm going to do a treatment on it to bring it back to life. This is a technique called Shoshuggi bond. It gives waterproofing and it brings some of the color back to it, but I'm doing it because I like the way it makes the knots and the grain look. Here I'm adding all the power. It'll have plugs, it'll have USB, it'll have probably 12 overall on this. The one thing you don't see here is I do 7 coats on this. I sand 220 in between each one of them, and then before the last coat I sand down to 320. It makes it real durable and smooth. Off camera I made this monitor stand, that way I would have more desk space. It will also house my cameras and charging stuff underneath it, but allows me to have full space of the desk. This will sit on the back of the desk up against the wall. There are 4 wall brackets that hold 150 pounds apiece. Each have 4 screws into it, and all of the weight sits on the back right over the brackets, so this is plenty. I needed it floating so I could roll my chair underneath it. I'm also mounting a 55-inch monitor on the wall. That way, when I get tired and I'm tired of sitting at the desk, I can sit back in my chairs and I can preview the videos that I've shot. I wanted to put a mount where I could have my microphone, camera, and light always set up and also movable. This way, when I'm working at the desk and I'm doing hand work, I can just turn the camera on and turn the microphone on and I'm good to go. This part was just for fun. I wanted to put the guitars on the wall and do a little guitar montage because these are cool. So I decided to finish all the panels on the sides of the TV. That way all the walls would have some type of sound treatment on them. Saucy G! She just loves this, can't you tell? So in controlling all the light in my media room, I decided to build these frames that would go over the windows out of a lot of this is the lumber from the bed that I took apart. So I'm going to build these frames and I'm going to use 3/4 inch poly. So there's a 1x4s with 1/4 inch poly all inside of it, and I'll put blocks on the inside to keep them from falling in. And I'll also put trim on the outside to keep them from coming out. Look at that idiot. Get away from me. These are the blocks I talked about, put on the back, and that way it just gives it some, stability on the edge of it. I'm using super glue and activator. The activator hardens the glue instantaneously. All these lights on the bottom, I put them out just to see what it would look like, and I don't like it because you can see the individual dots of the LEDs. I have a better idea. I'm going to attach them to the window treatments and make a plug where it unplugs so I can make everything removable. I ended up spray painting the poly foam on this, thinking it was going to give me a little bit of dullness behind these 3D PVC formed plastic panels that I put up. But I think what I'm going to do instead is once I get all the panels glued on and the trim on, I am going to clean it all up. I'm going to fill all the holes, and then I'm going to paint the whole thing, because these are paintable. The thing that's nice about these is that light hits them and it will absorb and give this kind of cool effect, especially if you light it up at an angle. The other thing it'll do too is because you have all these multifaceted cuts on it, sound hits it, and then the sound breaks up in a bunch of different directions and dissipates really quickly. I tried adhering these a couple of different ways, and it seems like the way that worked the best is I put hot glue on the corners, and then I use this adhesive, and the adhesive is for long hold. Later on, I went back and I did some of the corners that didn't adhere real well with super glue and activator, and all three of those worked very well. So this is the trim that goes on the outside. It will actually keep the poly foam from coming out and give it quite a bit of strength. But I used MDF because it's a little bit lighter, because the only thing that this is holding to the window on, it's going to sit on top of the frame, and then I'm going to be drilling through the sides and putting pegs in, that way they won't come off. I'm using 1.75" trim nails to go through the actual trim on the outside into the frame underneath. It looks like I'm shooting it into my hand, but I'm just trying to determine how far away it is from it, and I did pretty good at hitting all of it. I'm cutting blocks that are going to go where the trim meets to hold the trim flat. And like I'm showing right here, I put the block underneath, clamp it on top to pull both of the trim pieces together, and then I nail through the top of it. And I didn't want to put a lot of weight on here. The less this thing weighs, the better. But this will really strengthen it up and hold that that trim flat all the way around and flush. Wanted to do caulk all the way around this to make sure that it was all clean. I didn't want any light coming through it. Here I am filling all the holes that I used the nails on. I said 1.75" earlier, and I think they're 1.5" nails that I shot through this. Plus I'm doing where all the trim meets, getting it all nice and smooth, and then I'll sand it later. And then I'm painting just the back side of this, the actual frame that hangs on the window, just to give it some clean look. I'm not worried about it being perfect because it's not ever going to be seen. Saucy wanted to pay me a little visit while I was sanding, and I obliged. I love that little dog. She is so sweet. So I sanded all this down. I'm going to paint the outside trim probably the same gray that's in my room. And then I'm blowing it all off because next I'm just attaching some of the panels on here. I'm using CA glue and a little bit of activator and giving myself a little kick there. It's instantaneous when it sticks. I'm also using a gloss protectant, which is enamel. And these things, like I said before, are paintable, so I'm painting all of them. I'm just putting a couple of coats on them and getting her out of the spray. I'm just putting a couple of coats on them so it'll reflect light just a little bit better. Also, I'm using this little spray can holder, and it makes it nice. The moment of truth. Immediately all the light disappears. I'm very happy about this because it did exactly what I wanted it to do. The only light you see in the room is what's coming from my computer. Now I can put what light I want in the room or remove these to get natural light. It's the best of both worlds. And this is just a test with LEDs laying over the top of it and a light shining up. And you can see how it looks here, how it gives a really cool glow to the white panels that I did and the lighter color panels on the outside. You can see the red shining up and giving some cool little image on there. You even kind of see a little tiki face in. But just changing the saturation in post after I shot this video, you can see what editing can do to it. It looks really, really cool and gives me a lot of options to change the background. I'm not going to take a deep dive into this, but when you're using LED lights and you want them in several different areas, but you want them all to be the same color, or you want them all to do the same type of effects that's going on and use one remote, the best thing to do is use this terminal, but you have to make sure that all your wires are exactly correct, because if you do one of them wrong, then one might be green and one might be pink and one might be... The best way to do this is do one wire at a time. Then put it into the terminal, lock it down, then do the next wire. That way you know you're doing them correctly. When I was doing my kitchen, I did 7 of these going to 7 different lights because the cabinets were at different levels, and this was the best way to do it. This is the connector that I snipped off the end of one of the LED strips, and what I'm doing is I'm going to put it on the other end of the terminal. I'm going to make sure that all these line up correctly, starting with the power and then going all the way down it, and then it plugs into the power supply. You also have to do this on the ends where the LEDs meet, so if you have to plan this out. If you don't plan this out, you are going to have the biggest nightmare and headache on the face of the planet. So here it is. Dun, dun, dun. Okay, let's plug it in. And dun, dun, dun. I'm also going to use these same type of lights on my desk, under the monitor shelf, and behind the monitors on the wall. I'm also going to tie them into this terminal. That way I have one remote will control all LEDs in the room. There's also the option to buy smart lights like this so they can be Alexa controlled. Here I'm making a hole and putting in an eyelet so I can use zip ties to actually where the lights plug in here, which they go all the way down the side and come back down. And then they end off here, and you just fold them and put them where they need to be. I'll use that little eyelet to tie off the power, and then I just drilled it at an angle on all 4 sides on each one of these and just put pegs in. So while this light test is going on, I want to cover some of the reasons why I did this. Yes, my desk was too small, but when I started looking on studios and how to build a studio, everything was super expensive. They were talking about $5,000 cameras and $2,000 to soundproof. I just needed to deaden the room. I wanted to also, if I was going to deaden the room, I wanted something that looked cool. I knew I was going to do something with lights, and as it went through, I kind of figured out what I was going to do with the lights to give me some different looks in the room, give me different backgrounds. So what I did with my electronics is I started with a GoPro, and then I have an iPhone 13, and I have a used T6 Rebel camera. Between those 3 cameras, I get great shots. I usually take pictures with the T6, and then I do my videos with the other ones. This whole process of doing this and everything that you have seen has been with the cameras that I have. I also have a recorder that's about $100 and a nice little microphone that's about $60. That way I get real clean sound. I have some old microphones because I'm an old audiovisual guy, so that's what I'm doing my voiceover right now. So I'm able to sit down and edit all of this, shoot all of this video while building the studio, so I could use the footage from the studio to build the video. Very convoluted there, sorry about that. But it was a fun process, and throughout the process I learned a lot. One of the big things, I had to learn software too, and my computer worked fine with this. So here's shots of the studio. These are all the still images of once it's done. I need to do a little bit of cable cleanup, and of course Sausage has already cleaned that chair. But here's the desk. I have everything that I need there at my fingertips. I have my computer, my keyboards to the computer. I have my music keyboards. I have the microphone that pulls out. I can do voiceovers like the one I'm doing right now. I'm doing on this system. You know, it makes it nice to be able just to sit down and work and not have to set stuff up. I can take all my camera gear is right here in this corner and I can charge it. All my guitars are right there where I can turn around and I can pick them up if I want to do some type of recording. So I am truly happy with this. The footage you're watching now is actually me sitting here doing the voiceover right now. I think this is a neat way to show how this is what the room looks like. This is the room in use. You know, this is what I built it for, and it's actually working out. It's actually better than I ever expected. And I had a little bit of a plan when I first started out, but as I went on, it got a little deeper and a little deeper and a little deeper, and it kept going. But now, it's in completion. More will be revealed. Namaste.